All right, yes. Right, hello. Can you hear me? Yes. I've got like 2 mics on, so I'm like double mic'd up, so hopefully it's double as loud. Look, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to come and talk to you. Obviously, as you've just heard, I am that crazy guy, let's be honest. I'm the crazy guy that decided to run a marathon every single day for 401 days in a row. That's every day for 401 days in a row. So as you heard, 10,500 miles, or basically from the middle of this hall here to Sydney in Australia. Halfway around the world. Who's been to Sydney? Oh, quite a lot of you. Get paid a lot, yeah? Yeah? I've never been. Yeah, I've heard it takes a while to fly, right? Yeah, well, it takes 401 days to run it. So I did it for a very important reason. I actually did it to raise £250,000 for 2 anti-bullying charities. And the reason for that was because bullying had had such a profound effect on my life. So much so that it created the life that I led for probably around about 20 years. What makes my challenge, I suppose, a little bit more extreme is the fact that actually 8 years ago, when I was 29 years old, I was actually 17.5 stone. I didn't run at all. I used to smoke 40 cigarettes a day. I used to be that guy that used to drive past runners with a fag hanging out the car window thinking, you bunch of weirdos, what are you doing? You know, why would you ever want to do that? I also drank myself under the table most days. You know, the glass of wine that you have on a night time that turns into a bottle, yeah? And before you know it, you know, you've drank the whole thing. I was quite depressed. I suffered severely from mental health issues. I'm not ashamed to admit it. I still do now. On top of that, I was in a relationship that I shouldn't have been in. And then on top of that, if all that wasn't enough, I actually suffered from what initially was diagnosed as a stroke at the age of 29, where I lost my sight and my hearing, the feeling in my left arm, and my speech. Thankfully, it came back and was downgraded to a TIA. But when something like that happens to you, you kind of realize that maybe the track that you've been on probably isn't the best one for you. But unfortunately, unlike the movies, you just suddenly don't get all the answers. They don't get rolled out on a red carpet and, great, you know what you're doing. You've got to figure it out, and it's terrifying. So what I want to try and do over the next kind of 40 minutes is talk you through the context behind why I did what I did. And then I'll tell you a little bit about it and a bit about what we're going to do in the future. Does that sound all right? I'm quite honest. I'm sure, obviously, you work in the healthcare profession. You hear things like this all the time. But I do want to caveat, if there is anything that I do talk about over the next 40 minutes that is, you know, it does affect you. It does bring up things, you know. Please, if you feel you want to get up and you want to leave, then I'm not going to be offended, all right? I want you to be all right. I don't want you to cry. All right? You can get a bit emotional. All right? Okay. So, growing up, I had a pretty epic childhood, I'm not going to lie. I grew up in a military family. Both my parents were military, in the RAF, the best one. Yeah. My mum was 2 ranks higher than my dad, which was brilliant. Yeah. My mother, she's a powerhouse, I tell you. You wouldn't mess with her. But back in the 80s, when a woman fell pregnant, she had to leave. You know, that was what happened back then. Now my dad is 2 ranks higher than her, but she's still the boss. There are 4 males in our family, including the cat, and honestly, she rules the roost. Now, both my parents, they're very different people. My dad, very black and white, very logistical, he was a senior ranking officer in the RAF, planned wars, risk. He loves a risk assessment, my dad. I tell you, he loves a statistic. But then my mum, on the other hand, she's very holistic. She thinks she can speak to dead people, you know. So having 2 parents like this was kind of responsible for what I turned out like, to be honest with you. It gave me quite an open upbringing. My parents instilled in me, I suppose, values such as, you know what, if you've got your own mind, go for it. If you've got a passion, go for it. You can do anything you want. And having 2 parents like that as a child, it instills confidence, it instills self-esteem. And do you know what? That's something that every child needs. Unfortunately, though, at the age of 10, after traveling the world, living in different countries, immersing myself in different cultures, learning different languages, meeting lots of different types of people, my life changed. My dad was posted to Germany. For those of you that don't know what that means, is basically he got told he had to go work in Germany. He got to work for a big organization called NATO. You might have heard of them. They're quite big. And their European headquarters are in a base called Ramstein in southwest Germany. Now, this is a big American Air Force base, so obviously I was well excited. I was like, oh my God, I'm going to live in America. Yeah? Obviously I wasn't, but that's what I thought. I was so excited to go, and when we arrived, it was everything that I thought it was going to be. And then my parents found out that, unfortunately, there was no schooling for British kids after the age of 10. That NATO had forgot to tell them. Bit awkward. My brother, who was 2 years younger than me, he could go to school in Germany. There was a British school there for him, but there was nothing for me. So my mum and dad had to make a choice, and there were 3 choices available to them. There was the American high school, which obviously would have been my number 1 choice, because everyone wants to go to an American high school. It's just like the movies, obviously. There was a German school. I was fluent in German. I could have gone there. We lived in Germany before. But I suppose most parents, they want their child's education to be a consistent thing, don't they? You want. My mum and dad thought, well, we're moving back in a couple of years' time, so, let's do what most military parents would do back in that situation, and that was to send their children to private school. Now, trust me, I didn't know what boarding school or private school was. It was never on the agenda with my parents. Back then, in those days, there were big bursaries handed out to officers' kids to be able to go to these places because, honestly, my parents would never have been able to afford it. But they were forced to make this choice. So at the age of 10, I got on a plane on my own, and I flew to Manchester. And then I got in a taxi, and I got across the Pennines, and I got put in a school in the middle of Sherwood Forest. And obviously, for me, I thought this was the biggest adventure coming. Because that's all I knew growing up, adventure. I knew the good in people. I didn't know bad in people. So that's how I viewed it, because I didn't know how to view it any other way. There was no such thing as Harry Potter when I was the kid. So, I didn't know what this building was going to look like or how it was going to feel. But driving down the drive, obviously not me, but the taxi driver, this big building at the bottom appears, and I get that feeling in the bottom of my stomach. You know that kind of sick feeling that you get sometimes when you get a bit nervous or you get a bit, anxious, and you're put in a situation where actually you don't really know what the outcome's going to be. And because I didn't really have this feeling that often, I didn't really know what it was. I didn't know if it was good or bad, but what I did know was that I didn't have a choice. I remember when this building appeared, I just went, wow, this is unlike anything I've ever seen before. It was very much like that opening scene of Harry Potter. We had a big cathedral on the side of this school. There was a big great hall on the side of this school. We had the long tables, and the teachers, they sat at the top. It was, they had all the names around the hall as well from previous students that had won awards, and you're just like, this is nuts. I quickly realized in the first 3 weeks at this school that it was a bad feeling I had in my stomach. Whereas I valued people and experiences and what I could learn from others, these other kids, unfortunately, they valued what types of cars their mum and dads drove, and the money that their parents had, or the holidays that they'd just been on, or the clothes that they wore, or the technology that they had. All these materialistic things, which we know we can't take with us, but this was what was important. This was their language. And because I didn't speak that language, I was seen as a bit of a freak. I was seen as a bit unworthy because I was a bit different. So, at the age of 10, you have your own mind. Having 2 parents that were very strong-minded, instilling that in me, I was able to stand up to begin with and go, actually, no, the way I think's fine. But after a while, when somebody says how you think is completely wrong, and you don't have the other people on the other side of you telling you how you think is right, it gets in here. And it gets right inside, almost in your soul, and it starts to affect how you speak, how you act, how you behave, and after no time at all, with your confidence dropping and your self-esteem dropping, you start to become a shell of who you were before, and you start to behave and talk just like they want you to, because all you want is for them to like you and accept you. My bullying at school, it lasted for 8 years. The reason why it lasted for 8 years was because I was terrified to tell anyone. I thought if I did, it would make it 10 times worse, and actually I didn't have the energy to deal with it as it was, let alone being 10 times worse, so I thought, well, I'll just try and deal with it myself. Also, it was a throwaway comment by my mum. She didn't mean it. You don't get an instruction manual when you have a baby, do you? You do the best job you can. But I went home the Christmas after going away to school, and my mum and dad, they're soulmates. They're more in love now than what they've ever been. Makes you sick. Yeah. No one likes to see the parents kissing, do they? God, come on. No. But Mum said to me, she went, sending you away to school almost split me and your dad up. And I remember taking it as if, oh my God, I was responsible for that. She didn't mean it. She didn't mean it like that at all, but that's the way I took it. So every single time they rang me up at school or I rang them up, she could hear it in my voice. Mum's can, Dad's can. She said, is everything okay? And I go, yeah, everything's fine. Because I didn't want them to have to have gone through what they went through for nothing. And I think that was the start of my problems, feeling I could deal with it all myself. My bullying, it was mental to start with, your typical name calling, your ostracizing, the books being knocked out your hand. But then it turned physical, and because I lived at the school 24/7, I had a room there. I used to get chased through the corridors during the day, and I used to get chased up into my room at night and beaten up on my bed. This one place that I should have felt safe, this one place that should have been my sanctuary, where I could get away from everything, shut the door, lock myself away, I didn't have it. And I lived on my nerves every single day, pretending to be what they wanted me to be. At 13, I actually discovered that I was a little bit different to these other kids. I actually discovered I was gay. And do you know what? It terrified the life out of me. Because not only was I a freak because I thought the way that, I did, but now I was gay. It was like, great, what had I done in a previous life, This was my thought. I had a negative idea of what being gay was like when I was a kid, because again, my school had also a very defined viewpoint on sexuality. If you were gay or a lesbian, it was bad, it was a sin, it was a sickness, it was a disease. It could be cured. Don't know if that's on the NHS, but hey, be expensive, mind, I'm sure. So a child that doesn't have any confidence or self-esteem anyway, to suddenly be told who they do not have a choice of being is wrong, well, what do you think I did? I just hid it. I didn't want to be the freak, and you don't want to be at 13. Your body's changing, everything's changing, your emotions are all over the place anyway. You just want to be, dare I say, normal. So basically, I put a face on. I pretended to be what they wanted me to be, because that's the only way I could feel safe and survive. And that took me to 18. At 18, after 8 years, I think I'd just had enough. And I don't think you could probably forgive me for feeling that way. Every day being abused, either mentally or physically, it has its toll on you. I didn't know who I was, what I wanted, what my aspirations were, what my visions in life were at the age of 18. And I just had enough. I remember going down to dinner one Sunday night, and because I was a full boarder, that's what they called it. The school only had 40 of us in it at the weekend. It was a massive building. It was in February as well, so you can imagine what the nights are like then. Cold, dark, a bit atmospheric. And this school, it was grand, but it was also really cold. Not just emotionally, but physically cold. And I was sat in this big great hall having my Sunday dinner like I did every Sunday, and I just remember thinking to myself, I don't want to be here anymore. I don't want this life anymore. So I took a knife from the cutlery drawer and I went up to my room. And I shut my door and I sat on my bed and I looked at the knife and I looked at my wrist and I thought, maybe this is it. Maybe this is the answer. I wrote a letter to my mum and dad. I said, I'm really sorry. I hope you're not disappointed. I tidied my room. I think the main reason for that was because I suppose it was me taking control back of something. I could organize my life. And then I did it. I took the knife to my wrist and I started to cut. And do you know what? Bloody hurt. I remember feeling so lost. I remember feeling so unsafe. I remember feeling so scared. But also I remember just feeling calm, because it was like this was the one thing that was going to end all of my pain. This was the answer. call it divine intervention or whatever you want to call it, but there was a knock at my door while I was doing it. And, anybody that's been in a situation like this, it's, for those that haven't, it's hard to understand, but it's like there's a finality to what it is that you're doing. You don't think about anybody else. You just think about what you're doing because that's what's going to end the pain. And it's almost like you're in a trance. I wouldn't say an out-of-body experience, but a trance. And having this knock at the door, it almost kind of brought me back. I remember going to the door and opening it, and there was no one there. And I remember thinking to myself, okay. I shut the door, I slid down the back of it, and I was in the floor in tears. But they weren't tears of, thank God I didn't do it. They were tears of fear. Tears of sheer fear that the one thing that I thought was going to solve it, I couldn't go through with. I remember at that point making a choice that I needed to get up and I needed to clean things up. I rolled my sleeve down, I ripped a bit of my t-shirt and I put it around my wrist to cover it up because I didn't want to go to the matron and talk to her about it because, I felt scared. About 6 years prior to that, my mum and dad had actually moved back from Germany, but they got posted via a place called Peterhead near Aberdeen. And unfortunately, back then, the local school, the academy, had a bit of a reputation. You do not put an English military kid in Peterhead Academy because they'll get murdered. So obviously my parents, they didn't want me to be murdered. Little did they know what was happening to me at school. So when they said, look, we're going to think about keeping you in, are you okay? What would I say? Yeah, I'm fine. My brother joined me. And then a couple of years later, my parents moved to Lincoln, which is where they live now, and where they've lived since. And this was only about 40 miles away from where the school was. So I used to go home kind of every couple of weeks. I try and make sure I didn't go home that often because I really enjoyed it at home. But then I also spent the whole of Saturday night not sleeping, and then the whole of Sunday just worrying and feeling sick because it would come 5 o'clock and my dad would put me in the car and then he'd drive me back to school and it would just be back to hell again, somewhere where I didn't feel safe. So what I did was, it started off every 2 weeks going home, and then it would be every now and again. It was 3 weeks after trying to take my own life the first time that I went home. And trust me, we don't live in a big house, just a normal family home. And my dad, he was away on exercise, so it was just me, my mum, and my brother. My brother had been taken out of the school, ironically, because he was being bullied, and he had the courage to talk up about it. And he was in local state school, but I carried on, final year of my A-levels. It came to the Sunday to go back to school, and my mum couldn't find me. She couldn't find me anywhere. She finally found me. I was behind a door in the garage, a door that my dad had taken off one of the bedrooms, from probably some DIY project that he was doing or something. But I was in the fetal position behind the door, shaking, pulling at my hair. And it's actually a point which I can't really remember much from. It was the point I was having my nervous breakdown, and a point that I think I blanked out. But from what my mum has said, when she found me, she asked me what was wrong. And you have to excuse the pun, but it all came out. Apart from the gay thing, I couldn't deal with the gay thing at that point. I could deal with the abuse. I could tell her about that. And, I don't know, hands up, who's a mum in the room? Quite a lot, okay. Who's a dad? Okay, cool. I'm not saying this isn't the same for dads, but it's just, I think it's something with mums. If I ask the mums, if somebody screwed with your child, what would you do? Yeah. I don't, come on. I know dads, you'd probably beat them up as well, but mums, I don't. It's like this lioness erupts, right? Yeah? You'd knock them out. You might work for the healthcare profession, but do you know what? Because they've attacked your own. Add the fact my mum's from Yorkshire on top of that, and well, you can kind of imagine how it all went. It was like this beast just erupted from inside of her. I do remember feeling scared at that point, and I thought she was angry with me. But she wasn't. She was angry with the school. She was angry with the situation. She felt guilt like nobody's business because as a mum or as a dad, you're there to protect your child. And she felt she'd failed me when I didn't view it like that. She asked me what she could do to help. You know, my mum's an ex-nurse. You know, she's been in the nursing profession right the way through the military. She ended up becoming a counsellor and an NLP therapist. You know, she loves to care for people, and that's all she wanted to do was, what could I do to help? And do you know what I said to her? Supposedly I took her hand and I took her to the medicine cabinet in the kitchen and I said, if you want to help me, you can help me take all of this. And obviously that's not something a mum wants to hear. It was at that point that she left me in the house with my brother. She went to the school and I never went back. God knows what she said, but I never went back. I was homeschooled for the last few months of my A-levels, and I came out with 2 after starting with 6. A C and an E in maths and physics. Woo! Yeah, great. What am I going to do with that? I remember sat at home after kind of finishing my A-levels, after getting my results. And I don't know what it is about the age of 18, but we put a lot of expectation on kids of the age of 18, don't we? You know, we ask them quite a few questions, like, what are you going to do for the rest of your life? I'm sorry, but there's still probably a few people in this room that don't know what they're going to do for the rest of their life, yeah? Yeah, if you're honest. How do we expect an 18-year-old to make that decision? You know, some are emotionally intelligent enough to make that choice, and some do know what passion they have and what they want to do in life, but most, they don't. They just want to go and explore. They just want to find who they are. They want to figure out what their passion is. They've just finished school. I was very easily influenced at the age of 18 because, again, I'd spent 8 years just trying to get people to like me. So when somebody turned around to me and said, well, why don't you go to university? I went, yeah, all right then, let's go. I ended up in Middlesbrough. Nice place. Interesting place. A place very different to anywhere that I've ever been before. But I ended up at Teesside University studying a psychology degree, which I'm sure the irony is not lost on any of you in this room. Yeah. For somebody that is incredibly dyslexic, by the way, who struggles to read and write and spell, you can imagine doing a very theoretical degree that involved a lot of reading of articles, yeah, a lot of writing of academic articles, and a lot of spelling of words of more than 2 syllables. You can imagine how my university career went, yeah? The finding yourself part, I found myself in a pub. Most days. That was my uni. But I also found myself starting to smoke. And I also found myself getting involved with a bad crowd of people and starting to take drugs. And where I thought these people were there to support me, they just weren't. They led me down a path that I was quite willing to follow because I didn't know any different. And one night of partying would turn into 2, into 3, into 4, and then, do you know what? There'd be weeks where I never went to uni. God knows how I passed my first year. I failed my second, went part-time for that. And after kind of coming out of university about 4 years later, this time 36 grand in debt, but with a drug and alcohol problem, so on a real step forward on life's plan, I was back at home in Lincoln with my dad sat there in his infinite pearl of wisdom, you know, black and white, yeah, to the point. Son, you need to get a job. Like, thanks, Dad. Lucky I had a cousin of mine that worked in retail. He was a senior manager, basically headed up the graduate program for a big company called Arcadia. You might have heard of them. They've been in the news lately. Yeah, it's a while back. So he gets me a job. So you know, right? I end up working on a graduate program. Did I want to work in retail? Me, fashion retail, not going to happen. That wasn't what I was interested in. Not saying that there isn't anything wrong with it, but for me, it just was not for me. But it was a way out. It was a step out of where I was. So I did it. I managed stores in Newcastle, in Nottingham. I even went back to Middlesbrough, which obviously was a great life choice. I managed a store in London, in Oxford Street, top man. I met a girl. I fell in love. And about 15 years ago, moved to Bristol, which is where I live now. And then I quickly left because I actually realized that it just wasn't for me. The girl that I was working with, was actually part of the HR department within this big FTSE 100 company in South Bristol. So you can guess where I went next, right? Yeah? I started at the bottom of this FTSE 100 company. And going back to my growing up, I was always taught in life to be successful. I had to almost collect this list of materialistic things. If you think about it, this kind of almost life that we aspire to have, we judge other people on it. So to be successful, you need to be married, or to be successful, you need to have some form of family, dog, cat, white picket fence, nice house, nice car, good job, good wage, final salary pension scheme. No, all right, we're not going there. That's all I knew. I was also told to be successful, I would therefore be happy. And who doesn't want to be happy, right? So I literally, excuse my French, but I worked my ass off for about 6 years, from the bottom, near enough to the top of this company. And at the age of 29, I was on £60,000-70,000. I was managing a team of about 12 people. I was a commercial analyst. My background was data, so I used my maths A-level. I kind of enjoyed the job that I was doing. I thought it made me happy. I got married. It got really serious. We had cats. The commitment, eh? I bought a nice house in Somerset. It's not cheap. And on paper, I had everything that you would suggest I would therefore be happy. And I thought I was. Until literally one day at work, staring at my computer screen like that, it's like somebody started to wipe my sight. It's the only way I can kind of describe it. It's like it went from this side of my head to this side of my head. A bit like when you put oil on the top of water. That kind of almost murky, glistening kind of. When that happens, you start to freak out a little bit, because obviously that doesn't happen every day, doesn't it? You start blinking like that, thinking there's something wrong. And then my ear, when it goes high pitch, yeah, and then it just popped, and my hearing went, and I was like, well, what's going on now? And then in my left hand, it was like I'd sat on it for about 10 minutes. And when you get pins and needles? And it started to work its way up my arm and into my chest, and at no point did it hurt. No point whatsoever. I was panicking. I was worried. The colleague next to me was freaking out a little bit. And then, as I was talking to her, what I thought I was making sense, to her I wasn't. It was jumbled. My words were slurring. So she thought the best thing to do at that point was to go on to NHS Direct. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard that story before, right? Yeah, about 15 minutes of asking me questions. Obviously can't see, can't hear, can't speak. You can imagine how far that got. It said, ring an ambulance. And I was blue lighted through to the BRI, the Bristol Royal Infirmary in the centre of Bristol, where this lovely lady doctor, after hooking me up to tests and doing scans on my neck, and she turned around and says, we think you've had a stroke. And I remember thinking to myself, sorry, what? You obviously went to the crappiest medical school in the world, because I'm sorry, 29-year-olds, they don't have strokes. Well, that's what you think anyway. When you conjure up your idea of what you think of somebody that has a stroke, we're humans at the end of the day, we make judgments on people. And you think somebody that's overweight, somebody that smokes a lot, is unhealthy, doesn't exercise, somebody that's stressed out beyond belief, somebody that's older. Do you know what? I was every single thing on that list, apart from old. And sat in the room a couple of weeks later, surrounded by people that actually ticked every single one of these boxes on the list. I remember thinking to myself, I don't belong in this room. And that was the moment of realization for me. Luckily, mine had been downgraded to a TIA because my sight, my hearing, my speech, it came back. You might notice that I don't script my talks, and I don't use PowerPoint. I can't. It's one of the remnants of it. I just have the inability to do it. So sat there thinking, I need to change, but not having a clue how to do it. It was terrifying. I knew I had to do something, but I didn't know what it was. I told my ex-wife that I was gay. That was the first thing I did. And do you know what? I was scared. Contrary to popular belief, you can be gay or a lesbian and you can actually fall in love with the opposite sex. You fall in love with the person at the end of the day. We were best of friends. We've been through so much together. Our families were intertwined. We got on. We had future plans. We were thinking about starting a family. But do you know what? She deserved to be happy. And I couldn't give her all of that. But so did I. I just didn't know what mine looked like. So getting a divorce and moving out, you'd think that my whole life would then change, right? Because I've had this big moment. Nothing else changes. I don't suddenly become the healthiest I've ever been in my life. I don't suddenly stop smoking or stop drinking. In fact, I think I do more of it. And for the next year, I just carry on, and it takes me to 30. And a friend of mine, we're sat in a pub over a pint of cider. It's one of your 5 a day in Somerset, by the way. And my friend, bless her, she just turns around to me and she says, "I'm sick of you." And you go, "Sorry, what?" And she went, "I'm sick of you." I went, what do you mean? I said, "I'm absolutely sick and tired. You've basically spent the whole year moaning." It's like that's all I'd done all year, moaned and complained to her, and she literally had enough at this point because there's only so much she could take. And she went, "What are you doing with your life?" And obviously when somebody says that to you, you get a little bit defensive, don't you? You go, well, and all the barriers, they come straight up, don't they? All the excuses start coming out. Well, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. And because she didn't take any of it, I had no excuses left. I was that guy that got the gym membership in January. And then basically I went a couple of times and I was still paying for it in December. Yeah? And obviously you renew it, thinking that it's going to be the new you in January, don't you? Yeah? Or the diet. The diet's another perfect thing, especially in December. Yeah? We spend December kidding ourselves that because the family's coming round and because all the offers are on in the supermarkets and wine's on 6 for 25% off, we should buy it. We fill our houses with chocolate and sweets and grits and cake to literally feed an army. And our family ain't that big. Yeah? You spend literally all the way up. Christmas party food, going out, gorging yourself, don't you? Christmas Day, gorging yourself. You feel lethargic, you fall asleep in the afternoon watching the telly. Boxing Day, you might eat a little less, but it's all leftovers, isn't it? And then you get the other cake out that you've bought because it was 2 for 1. And then you basically spend, from Boxing Day to New Year, going, do you know what? I'll just eat up through the cupboards. Because come the 1st of January, it will be the new me. Yeah, I'll never buy chocolate again. I'll never drink. I'm going to give up alcohol. New Year, I'm going to give it up because I'm going to be the fittest I've ever been. I'm going to be the healthiest I've ever been. It is going to be my new life. Do you? No, you don't. Basically, you've corked the bottle of wine a week after New Year. The crisps are on the table, and you sat down going, "It's a stressful week at work. I deserve it." Yeah? It's human. Or the London Marathon. Now, this could be a little bit controversial with some of you in the room. Any of you run in the room? Okay, it's good for the NHS. All right, when I say run, do you move your legs a little bit quicker than walking? Oh, a couple more people put their hands up. That's okay. Has anybody watched the London Marathon on the telly? Yeah. All right. I don't know what it is about the BBC, but they get quite emotive, don't they, when they do their London Marathon programme. You watch it and you see all these people of all different colour, creeds, backgrounds, sizes, and you think, how the hell are they doing that? Yeah? You see the chafing, you see a bit of bleeding, you hear the stories, and you can't help but get a little bit emotional. Yeah? If you don't cry at that, you're dead inside, basically. Yeah, your souls are dark. And then you might, just might, go, do you know what? I think I could do that. Do you? No. Or if you do, you sign up to the ballot and then hope for God's hell's chance it doesn't pick you. Because then you can turn around to all of your friends and family and go, do you know what? At least I tried. Yeah? Yeah, my other half had the same idea. Unfortunately, they picked him. Yeah. It's human. That's what we do. But that's the type of person I was, and this is why my friend was sick of me, because I was always that guy that went, I'm gonna, and I never did. And because she pulled me up on it, She was that person that offered out her hand to help me. I just didn't recognize that that was what she was doing at that time. And then the most terrifying words came out of her mouth. Why don't you come and join my running club? You already know my relationship with running at that point, yeah? I thought, why would I want to do that? My bullies at school were sports people. Why would I ever want to put myself in a situation where I was put in front of people like that and be attacked? We want to feel safe, don't we? But I thought I don't have an excuse. So I rocked up to this running club on a Tuesday night in February. Everything happens in February. 6 o'clock. And I remember I went in baggy tracksuit bottoms, a baggy tracksuit top, and I had my hood up. And the reason why I went in that was because if any of my mates see me out, I could just stop and walk, and I could be saying, oh, I'm just popping down the shop for some milk. I put a barrier there straight away. But then when I got to the door, I got that sick feeling in my stomach again, that whole feeling of like, I don't belong here. They're going to laugh at me. I'm going to get left behind. It's going to hurt. I did think I was going to die. Because you do, if you're not used to your heart beating very fast, you think, oh my God, it's going to beat and explode. You have all these crazy thoughts in your head. But the main thing was I'd felt I didn't fit in. And then someone opened the door, and when you're coming in, and unfortunately my feet and my head were not connected. And these just went like that. I put my 50p in the pot because that's what you have to do at my running club. 50p, that's all you pay. 50p for happiness. It's a bargain, honestly. And I turned around and realized there were a lot more people that looked like me. Terrified. I saw the group of them. They were in the corner. And I made a beeline for them. Found out they were part of a walk to run group. Or you might hear it's Couch to 5K. Yeah? They were coming to the end of their Couch to 5K, so I was like, God damn it. I joined them at the wrong time. But that night, it took me almost an hour, but I covered 3 miles. It wasn't pretty, it wasn't graceful, I didn't run it all, but I covered 3 miles. Furthest I'd ever gone in my entire life. And I remember getting back to the pub, which is where the running club started and ended, by the way, so a big tick. They also give you a free pint after your first run. Yes, I was there. They put the pint down in front of me, and I remember everything in my body hurting. My ankles, my knees, my hips, even the rolls of fat around me hurt, and I didn't smell too good. But the first time in 20 years, it's like this little fire had been lit. I didn't fall in love with it straight away, trust me. You know, it took a few months. But what I fell in love with was this fire, this feeling. And it made me realize that I'd been numb for a long time. So I went back the following week, and after 6 months, I ran my first half marathon, which was the Bristol half marathon. Hated every single goddamn minute of it. Too fast, and it ain't the most interesting course. Beautiful city, but you don't run round it. You run down some desolate long road for about 4 miles and turn around and run back. You know, you go underneath the suspension bridge, which is nice, but that's only a mile in. Yeah? I remember going back to club on the Tuesday night, and a mate of mine turned around to me and said, did you enjoy it? Did you like it? How did you get on? And I went, no, I hated it. I'm never running again in my entire life. To which then he answered, well, have you thought about maybe running a marathon? And I remember thinking to myself, sorry, what? What I didn't understand about the running community at that point was this almost logical illogicness, if you get what I'm trying to say there. Runners, they seem to have this ability in their heads to kid themselves that what they're doing or planning, these crazy adventures, actually are the most sanest thing in the entire world. It's weird, and I didn't understand that yet from the community. But literally, he took me through this whole list of things as to why it would be good for me to run a marathon. Slower, I didn't have to run fast. Great. I could carry on eating, I could carry on drinking, I could chat, I could take my time. And by the end of this conversation, I'd signed up to my first marathon, which took me to Brighton in 2013. I remember on the start line in Brighton thinking to myself, I am not prepared for this. I downloaded the 16-week training program 2 months prior to the actual, marathon, so you can imagine there straight away. I remember starting the race thinking, okay, I've been to the expo the day before, and they show you this big virtual map where they go, mile 3, the crowds are amazing, mile 6, your water station, mile 20, it's when you're going to die. I started off, I started off with that kind of belt of about 40 gels that you see people wearing. These horrible like liquid gels that every runner seems to think that they need. You don't need it. Honestly, your body's got enough energy inside of it. I drank too much water at the water stations. It was a really hot day. You train through the whole winter, and then it's literally blistering heat. So you're not prepared for it. So you're yamming water all over you. You're down in it like this. And you nick a lot of sweets off the kids at the side of the road as well. You know, they have bowls of them. I don't know if you've ever supported a big run or you've seen people handing them out. When in your life would you ever nick a sweet off a child at the side of the road? You know, just imagine all those dirty hands that have been in it before you. Because I was not at the front. And obviously you put all this rubbish in your body, don't you? And it's kind of then got to come out. And we're going there, by the way. Anybody that's run a big race knows that you avoid the Portaloo between mile 6 and mile 26 because people seem to lose the ability to aim. Now, I'm sure none of you that will shock you, but when you walk in and it's there on the side, and you think it's harder to get it there than it is in the hole, you know, you don't spend much time in there. You do what you need to do and you need to get out. And when I did, after holding my breath, I got out and I started to run again and nothing worked. My whole body had just seized up. At this point, I'm still a mile away from the turnaround point, so I'm running away from the finishing line still. Yeah, I get to Shoreham Power Station, turn around, you come back along the main road that you've just run and walked basically, or crawled, whatever you want to say, all the way to Shoreham Power Station. You pass Adele's house on the corner. Hers is on the corner if you ever run it. And then you're on the seafront and you look down the seafront, you see Brighton Pier in the distance and you go, that's a long way away. And the bloody thing never gets any closer. And you have all those supportive people on the sidelines that are going, you're amazing. It's so inspiring. Oh my God, you're doing an incredible job. Why are you walking? You don't have the energy to smack them in the face, but you really feel the want to. The anger is uncontrollable at this point. Google 7 stages of marathon running and you'll understand this whole journey. It's on YouTube. Perfectly sums it up. You do everything you can to get to the end, and I wish I could say that I ran over the finishing line with my arms outsplayed like this, because this is how you would want to finish your first race, right? Chariots of Fire style, that amazing picture. Yeah, this is my life. That doesn't happen. My face makes contact with the white line because I'm focusing so hard on it. And I think I'm run over it, but I think mostly I do is that over it because that's the only energy I have left. They cart me off. They put me in the finishing funnel. And anybody, again, that's ever run a long race like that will know that your brain gives up. This doesn't work anymore. So they hand me a bottle of water and they forget to take the lid off. So you're sat there looking at it, knowing what it is, but not knowing how to use it. They put a foil blanket round you, and then the most magical thing happened to me. Somebody put a medal around my neck. I cannot for the life of you explain what it is about that bloody bit of tin and that bit of ribbon, but it's almost a symbolism. A year before, I'd been stood at the front door of a running club, terrified, thinking I would never fit in, that they would laugh at me, that they'd leave me behind, that I wouldn't be safe. I didn't feel safe in that situation. But through the love and support of people that just got to know me and opened their arms, basically, to me. They didn't judge me. They didn't, question what I did or how much money I earned or my past. They just were there and being supportive. They were the ones that got me to the point of doing this 26.2 mile. Something that I never thought in my life I'd ever be able to do. I'd like to say that, I got hooked at that point. Kind of did. I did my second marathon. I went to Amsterdam. It was a great weekend. The marathon was all right as well. But I think after Amsterdam, I got hooked on marathon running because in 2014, I decided I wanted to amalgamate two of my passions, travel and running. I loved to travel when I was a kid. And because running was starting to build my confidence and self-esteem, what was happening was that my soul was kind of ridding itself of all the rubbish that I'd learnt for years and was filling itself up with almost all the good stuff that I'd learnt for the first 10 years of my life. It was balancing back out again. So I decided, travel and running, let's put them together. So I went and ran 18 marathons all around the world. I worked Monday to Friday, and then I'd fly out from Bristol Airport. You can get quite far from Bristol Airport. I ran in Stockholm, Copenhagen, Helsinki, Reykjavik, Oslo, Berlin, Paris. I ran in Madrid, in Barcelona, Seville, Fiorenza, Florence. I even started the Rome Marathon, the 20th Rome Marathon, peeing it down with rain. But we started at the Colosseum, we ran through the Vatican City. It was stunning. I went to Miami. I ran on the beach. I even went to San Francisco. I ran with 35,000 other people over the San Francisco Golden Gate Bridge at 6:30 in the morning as the sun was rising up over downtown San Francisco. Anyone that's ever been to San Francisco will know about the Vista Point, the other side of the bridge. If you ever go there. They take you over the bridge, around the Vista Point. You can get that beautiful panoramic shot of the bay and the bridge in downtown San Francisco. They bring you back round and you run down the other side of the bridge. It's stunning. I never thought I'd ever have experiences like that in my life. But meeting like-minded people that I trusted and that cared for me gave me that. And it was halfway through that year that I conjured up this idea of a challenge. This might be controversial in what I say next, but it's my view. We hear a lot nowadays when we talk about mental health, about people talking about it, don't we? And we say, if you have a mental health issue, talk about it. And that's all very well and good. But do you know what? I was not in a position to talk about my mental health issues. That actually made me more scared and it made me more anxious. What I needed before that was running. Running gave me the ability to talk about my mental health issues, and it allowed me to get therapy. And I went to see a counselor, and I talked about my problems, and you know what? I dealt with everything in my past. And it was at that point that I felt ready that maybe I could give back. The project that we came up with is known as the 401 Challenge. 401 marathons in 401 days. Trust me, it didn't start like that. It actually started at 53 because, do you know what? The world record was 52. We were trying to raise £250,000. We knew we had to do something big. I knew I liked running. Somebody suggested back-to-back marathon running. Remember the illogical illogicness of running? Yeah? It was all in a pub, which probably was half to blame. The guy who ran 52 marathons, around the world, in 52 days, ran 106 times around a running track for 52 days in a row. And I remember thinking to myself, I don't want to do that. Part of what we also wanted to do was to raise issues around bullying and sexuality, because that's what had a profound effect on my life. We wanted people to join in. We wanted people to come and run with us and speak out about it with us. Nobody was going to come and join me on a track. I wouldn't have even turned up. So we decided to ditch the world record attempt and break it anyway. Turned out there were a few people in the world that had the same idea. A couple in their 70s in Australia ran 100 back-to-back marathons as supposedly an anniversary gift to each other. I can think of better things, trust me. There was 2 Americans, 250, and then there was a Spanish guy that ran one every day for a year. And this is why it became 401. We rounded it up, we added one for a victory lap. And halfway to 2015, I sold my house, I sold everything that I owned. I bought a camper van, and I surrounded myself with people that loved me and cared for me and made me feel safe. People that felt that I could do anything I put my mind to, didn't doubt me. And that included my dad, logistics. He was in charge of that. That's what you want, innit? Military. He liaised with 350 running clubs all around the country. They were the ones that came out, planned the routes, brought the people. We actually ended up running with 13,500 people between Land's End and John O'Groats within 8 miles of everywhere on the British mainland. My mum, bless her, she looked after the therapy side of things. So who was going to look after me, not just physically, but also mentally as well? Where was I going to stay at night? How was I going to feed myself? All these things that you don't think that you have to take into account, but you do. Unfortunately, though, she was diagnosed with cancer in the January of the challenge, so she had to take a step back. And that's where my other half came in, Kyle. Now, my other half is an interesting fish. He hates running. He cannot stand it. He thinks I'm a weirdo. Yeah. He boxes, so he hits things, I run away from things. It's a great relationship, it works. But I remember on our first date in Weston-super-Mare, classy, I know, right by the Winter Garden, opposite the pier. I took him for a coffee, and I remember thinking to myself, I really like this guy. He's the guy I could see myself spending the rest of my life with. So I've kind of got to tell him what I'm going to go and do. And I did, and do you know what? He didn't bat an eyelid. I thought he hadn't heard me, but he had. And I think that's why we were successful in what we did, because I was surrounded by people that made me feel I could do anything I put my mind to. He came on board and project managed what historically now is classified as probably one of the biggest running projects there's ever been in the world. I'm the only person to have done this. Nobody else has done it. Over the next 401 days, we covered everywhere. We changed the lives of thousands of people. We raised the issues of bullying and sexuality, and we made a positive difference in people's lives. It wasn't free of injury. I unfortunately broke my back halfway through. I took 10 days off the road and then went back, still with a broken back, which was a bit nuts. And I carried on, but we ran ultramarathons then to make up the miles that we've missed out on. So we still finished on the same day. It stopped becoming a physical task and started becoming more about this. The project, and I will leave you on this, the project, it won a number of awards, including a Sports Personality of the Year award. It won a Pride of Britain. It won commendations from the Queen and the Prime Minister. You know, we're part of the BA 100 Britain Makers list. You know, these are all amazing things and accolades. But what we are most proud of is the fact that we gave people a safe environment to stand up and shout with us. Bullying isn't okay. Making people feel bad about who they are is not okay. And this is where the 401 Foundation comes in now. The legacy to the challenge is a mental health foundation. We're not here to take away from the work that you do. We're here to support community projects that don't necessarily get the funding that they require. These are small groups that we provide grants of between £10,000 and £3,000 to throughout the entire country, and they are there to build confidence and self-esteem and tackle issues around mental health and self-development. This is the legacy. All because one crazy guy decided to run a few marathons. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ben. I just wonder if anybody has got any questions for Ben before we finish.
Just physically, how did you adjust to stopping after 400?
Yeah, I really struggled afterwards. I think it's one thing that we weren't really prepared for. Unfortunately, I was the first guy to do this in the world, all 6-7 billion people on the planet, so there's nothing really written. There's no kind of research or anything like that. There's no journal that we can read, or, you know, there's a little bit about it, and you hear it from professional sports people or people that retire. It comes down, I think, to a sense of purpose. My purpose had been achieved on day 401, and then afterwards I didn't have one. Well, that's how it felt to me, and I was living my life here and then here within the space of 10 minutes, and nobody can live their life like that. You know, I spent 401 days burning adrenaline, and, well, I've been told the counteragent to that's serotonin. Am I right? Am I? I don't know. I'm not medical. But supposedly that's what equals you out. And this is why we want a consistent life, don't we? Have a few blips every now and again, but you can't live your life like that. And that's how I was doing it. Morning of sports personality, I'd been in bed for 2 days, crying my eyes out, not being able to get out of bed and wash myself. Kyle threw me in the shower and said, the car's coming. You know, we need to get you dressed. And then I was stood on stage with Paula Radcliffe and Tom Daly accepting an award and being told to be inspiring. You know, it's like, these were amazing moments, but I couldn't appreciate them because I had no purpose. That had gone. And it's so important, I think, for a human being to have a purpose, whether or not that's a big purpose or a small purpose, whatever it is. You have to have a goal. Mine came in the form of that. Good year after, though, I got put on antidepressants for a couple of months to help me sleep, because also one of the issues physically that we didn't anticipate was that my heart didn't actually grow in size, which is what they assumed was going to happen. It in fact stayed the same, but when I went to bed, my heart rate would jump to 180 beats a minute, and it would course adrenaline through my body, and I would wake up, and then I'd be sat up at 2 o'clock in the morning, also worried about the fact I didn't have a job, thinking, well, what do I do? So it then puts you in the cycle. We know what we like when we get tired. We can't think straight. But then on top of that, the physical and emotional stress of all of this. They put an ECG on me for 24 hours. I had 120 episodes of my heart rate jumping above what it should have been within that 24-hour period. And they just didn't know what to do. Thankfully, it settled itself out. It's just a reaction to what it was that I did. We have got another project that we've just launched. Yeah, no, the next one is next year, and obviously, we don't have much time to talk about that, but I'm going to America next year. I'm going to be running a marathon in every one of the 50 states of the US, but then I'm going to be cycling between them. So it's 18,500 miles, but instead of 401 days, we're going to be doing it in 104. So it's about 177 miles a day, 16 hours worth of exercise. We climb the equivalent of Mount Everest from sea level to the top and back down again 9.2 times. But we start in Maine, and then we end in Honolulu, obviously. The terrain, the weather, but it's all in aid of this, and also another charity called the Youth Sport Trust. You'll be able to hear more about it if you follow us at the 401 Challenge, not the foundation, but at the 401 Challenge. It's all right. But yeah, it's all about raising £1 million. So it'd be cool. But we've got a purpose, basically. So what I meant by that is that we'll be fine after the next one. It's probably going to be a down point, but we'll have a purpose after the next one.
Okay. One question for me, I suppose, Ben, is in terms of advice that you would give to us, the theme, today is the launch of our Keeping Everyone Safe Week. What advice would you give us as staff, as colleagues, as clinicians, in terms of keeping everyone safe, based on your own experience and story?
It seems really weird that I'm giving advice to people that actually work in the healthcare system. I think you probably know what I'm going to say, but it's about not forgetting that we're all human beings at the end of the day. It genuinely doesn't have to be complicated. It's funny, I talk in the financial sector, I talk in the legal sector, I talk in, accountancy firms, and these are all institutions where actually talking about any weakness or talking about anything is actually a weakness, or they feel like they have to walk through the door and they have to put this persona on. And what they forget is actually that they're a human being. I think when it comes to treating people, and this is just my opinion, but I would far rather be treated by somebody that gets me as a human being. Naturally, I obviously want you to be skilled, and I want you to be able to do the job that you can do, But yeah, it's just remembering that you're a human being.
Okay, thank you very much. So if again we can show our appreciation to Ben.
Thank you.